Now, question to you. What do you think is a software testing? What it is? QA job. What is it about? It's an open question. Any answer is good. Just tell me your thoughts. Come on.
Testing the software, whether it meets the requirements.
Okay, so the answer is testing the software is testing the software to check if it meets the requirements.
Meets the requirements.
Uh-huh.
To check
Okay.
if it's the quality as specified.
So basically we're checking the quality of the
quality
software.
Of the software.
Okay, but in simple words, when you say that you check the quality of the software, how do you check the quality of the software?
Look for bugs.
We look for bugs. So basically testing the software, the process of testing the software is the process of searching for software errors, right? And software errors are expensive. How much do you think it costs to the economy of the United States to have software bugs in, average number for all the programs that are being used here in the United States? Wild guess.
60 billion.
60 billion, yeah. It was some time ago, it's not the latest data, but it's around $60 billion a year. This is how much it costs to deal with software errors. And that's why it is important to release high quality softwares. And I'm not talking, about softwares that we deal with every day, like your cell phones, right? This is something probably that each of us can tolerate. But there are softwares that are used by government, by hospitals, by pharmacies, by banks, and those are very important to be tested. And those are very important to have the high quality, and those need to function properly for all of us to live to have a good experience in this life. So that's why software testing is very important. And if you think about it, it may be mission critical, right? It depends on what you test and what the software is doing. And by the way, this presentation is also available on the internet. If you go to partnov.com/data and navigate down to the section Other, this is me, Test Planning by Yana Murza. So this is the same presentation that I'm showing you now. A few minor differences, like a few slides are not there, but essentially it is the same. So you can view it on your desktops if you like to. Did you have a lecture on software development lifecycle? Yes? No? Just brief introduction to it. Okay. But you probably know that software development cycle looks somewhat like this. So we start with the planning phase, right? On the planning phase, what is being done? Planning, right? What is planning? Requirements are being gathered. So on the planning phase, what software development team is trying to understand, and when I say software development team, it's not only the development as development. This is also project management, QA, and on the first place, marketing, right? Marketing people and sales people, they're trying to understand what the software is supposed to do. So they're trying to gather the requirements and put them in some form of documentation. And by the way, one more note about today's lecture. What I'll be talking about today is the classical and actually best methodology to test softwares. But this is not, and I repeat, this is not the only way to test softwares. So some companies do follow different approaches. Some companies follow agile methodology. Some companies do not write any test cases. And this may be fine with small, companies that do either web-based softwares or release, something which has a very limited circle of customers. For the enterprise level companies, for the enterprise level products, company has to follow this process. Otherwise, there will be, bumps along the way, and the software that we receive at the end will not achieve the high quality that we all target for. And by the way, can you release products without testing? Software products without testing?
Depends, yes and no.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Can you drive without rules?
Yes.
Yes. What happens if you drive without rules?
You meet with accidents.
Accidents happen, right?
Yes.
Same, if you release the software without testing, the accidents will happen when customers will get it, right? So they will find the bugs. And by the way, why do we have bugs in the software?
Can be due to a lot of reasons, miscommunication, not coding right, or
Okay, there are different reasons, I agree. So one of them may be miscommunication, but the reason number one is actually the fact that the software is written by developers, and developers are humans, and all humans make mistakes, right? So developers may and will and do make mistakes. So this is how mistakes make their way into software, and eventually they result, some of them, not all of them, but some of them, most of them, will result in bugs. But as you rightly mentioned, some of the bugs happen due to miscommunication. So this is why it is very important, especially when you develop a large software where many people contribute and many people develop different modules. All those modules are supposed to interact with each other. It is very important that all documentation is put in place appropriately. And when we start with the planning phase, those requirements that we gather, when I say we, I mean project team, the team that deals with the release of the software, which includes development, I repeat, development, QA, project management, sales people, and also tech writers in some cases. It depends on whether you have documentation which accompanies the software release. So at the planning phase, everyone needs to agree on the requirements. So basically, requirements are usually driven by marketing department because marketing department deals with the customers. They know what customers are looking for. They know the segments of the market that the software is targeted for, and they do spend a lot of effort researching the needs of the market. So they are the best people to gather the requirements. Some companies hire business analysts, and business analysts are also people whose job is to take the requirement and transform it. Requirement from the customers. All customers speak different language, right? So and they need to transform those requirements from customers into software kind of readable requirement. Again, maybe different people, but again, the goal at the planning phase is to produce product requirement document or PRD. PRD is abbreviation for the product requirement document. Many companies lately use BRD, business requirement document, which is another abbreviation, but they basically mean the same. And essentially what it is, PRD is a set of software requirements, and who contributes to development of this document, primarily product marketing, sales, and tech support. And why do we need the requirements? We need to know what the software product is supposed to do. Usually requirements are very brief documents. They have a list of high-level requirements, and this is it. They do not contain all the technical details, the tiny details of how the software will work, which language will be used. We have different documents to do that. It is just a high-level set of requirements. QA role, when we look at the requirement documents, QA role is to participate in the reviews of this document. Basically, you take the document, you read it through, and if you have any questions or concern, you raise your voice and you highlight all the contradictions and ambiguities that you can find. And you also need to analyze this document for completeness. How many of you have previous experiences with the software? Any kinds of software? I mean, not as a user, but maybe as a developer, or maybe you had touched developer?
No.
No?
Project manager.
Oh, project manager, yeah. So if you don't have any previous experience in the software testing or development area, chances are when you look at the requirement documents, you read it, you don't understand too much. Because unless you are a specialist in the field for which this software is supposed to be targeted. For example, for me, when I was hired for that biotech company, it was easy to read the requirements because that was my field. That was something that I was doing on a day-to-day basis. So I understood, when I read it for the first time, I understood, let's say, about 30% of what the requirements were talking about. and the rest 70% I couldn't even understand. I panicked, I freaked out. Eventually I calmed down, and I found a way to understand the rest of the requirements. I found my ways to get it. My question to you is, if you read a document, whether it is requirement documents or some other of the documentation we'll be talking about, if you read the document and you don't understand what the document is about, you understand some, of course, it's written in English language, so you will understand the words. But when you put all the words together, they don't make too much sense to you, right? So my question to you is, what do you do? Ask. Whom do you ask?
Project manager.
First
Project,
the internet?
you can,
First the internet?
okay, the answers are, I'm saying it for the camera, so the answers are, you ask, and you ask project manager or you ask the internet. Those are good answers, but this is not your first line of, questions, questionnaires, right? The people who you ask first.
I would ask my manager, who do I ask first if I have a question?
Very good, Michael. You have a lot of experience. Yeah. So bottom line is, you can always ask your manager, and it is manager's job to direct you to the person who is supposed to explain you things. But if the manager is not available, let's say he went for a conference or for the offsite, or he's located somewhere in Bangalore, for example, or in Europe, right? And you're on your own. So whom else can you ask? Co-workers, your peers, right? Usually your first line of defense is your co-workers, your peers, and the lead. The QA lead is usually a person who is much more available than the manager. He's not or she's not that busy. Usually, or at least you can catch that person, because managers are often, doing the high-level meetings and being stuck here and there. And QA leads are very technical people, and if you have technical questions, they will provide you very good, detailed technical answers. In my experience, when a new person comes into a team, any QA team, nobody will jump on that person and ask him or her to produce any test results right away. Everyone understands, whenever you join a new project or new company, you need some time to adjust and digest and ramp up. So average time, in my experience, again, I cannot say for each and every company, but in my experience, the average time for your ramp up is between 2 and 4 weeks. So you will have between 2 and 4 weeks to get the knowledge of the product, to understand what the testing is about, to get familiar with the features. So you will have some time. But again, you should be proactive. You don't, 2 weeks, you might think it is a lot, it is not. So don't waste your time. If you read the documentation and don't understand it, jump around. Again, you can ask your peers, then lead, then manager. If none of them is available, or if you are the only person in a QA team, which may happen in a startup, for example, and I've been there, done that, then your only potential reference people are developers, right? Or maybe product marketing, or people. I've been in a startup where we had a QA team of 2 people, and 2 people, myself and my boss, had no clue what the developers are doing when we joined. So we had to poke around and be patient enough and be proactive and very polite. And our duty was to get the coffee in the morning, bagels in the afternoon. So developers are happy, and by keeping them happy, we got the answers we needed. So sometimes you have to tiptoe around. I'm not saying you have to be a servant for developers, but you need to establish a good relationship with everyone in the team. Actually, the only person in that startup that I'm talking about, the only person who knew, or at least had some ideas on what the software is supposed to be doing, was the CTO. That guy was a little nuts, and actually he couldn't even always communicate clearly what he wanted. So we had to go through a few rounds of very patient communicating through the emails. By the way, when you try to clarify the requirements, always have them in written. I'm telling, and whether it is requirements or test plan, everything, all documentation will have to be in a written form. I'm telling you this because when people communicate verbally, everything looks good, when you say it. But people's perception is very different. So if you put 10 people in a room and ask them to discuss some topic, any topic, what the weather is like, is it hot, is it cold, I mean, anything. When those 10 people leave the room and you ask each person separately what was the conclusion of the discussion, each person may give you a different answer. That's how different people's perception is. So that's why I'm saying you can talk to developers, you can put them in a room, lock the door, provide tea, coffee, whatever you want. You can, argue with them, not argue with them. It's up to you. But after the meeting is done, or the discussion is done, or you can pop in your CTO's cube and say, okay, please tell me what the requirements are, and he will talk to you directly. Maybe there are no meetings, or there is an informal chat on the kitchen, while you wait for your coffee to be done. So after all this is done, always send out, written summary and say, okay, this is what I think is the requirements. The job of you doing the requirements is not very typical. Usually, as I'm saying here, the requirements should be gathered by marketing, sales, tech support people. But if you are in a position in a small company where there are no marketing department, where there is no sales or tech support, and everyone is doing everything, which is very typical for a startup, don't hesitate to be proactive, as I said, and just run around, get the requirements, put them in written form, and send to everyone and say, guys, I'm in agreement that this is our requirements. So always have a written proof of what the requirements are. And I'll show you later why it is important. So the PRD can be written in any form. There are no standards, by the way, for any of the documents that we are talking about today. There are no industry-wide standards. So each company, each project may use its own. You can Google for any PRD examples, and they may all come in different formats. I've seen them in Word, Excel, Wiki pages, HTML, anything. What matters, actually, form doesn't matter in this case. What matters is the content of the PRD. Any questions on the requirements documents and how we get them? No, good. Then we go to the next stage of the product development lifecycle, and after planning comes the design phase. So design phase speaks for itself. Design phase is when developers finally start the design of the product. They may start with the prototype, which is a small and quick and dirty version of the program with few files in it, and they may check some techniques to use. Should we write in this language? Should we write in that language? And during the design phase, they start working, actually it's not true, they start working on documentation as soon as the requirements are done. It may happen in the middle of planning phase, but during design phase they definitely extend this document, and document I'm talking about is the design spec or functional spec. Spec stands for specification. So basically functional specification is the document, the document that tells us how the product will be designed. Or basically it answers the question on how the product will be doing what it's supposed to do. So the requirement documents is a document which tells us what the product is supposed to do. The specification is a very detailed description of how the product will be doing what it is supposed to do. Do you see the difference? PRD answers the question what software will be doing. Spec answers the question how the software will be doing what it's supposed to be doing. So all the technical details of the implementation, like database design, database schema, tables, server code, high level, maybe class structure, whatever developers think is important, they will put in the design documentation, which is the functional spec. Functional specs are usually developed by architects and engineers, and as I put here, it's seeded in the planning phase and developed actively during the design phase. At coding phase, it will be a little reworked, usually, may not be, but usually it is reworked. And we may also see some specification changes at testing phase as well. This happens if you find some critical software errors, and the design need some changes to fix those errors, because there are errors, there may be errors in the design, and then the specification will need to be updated to provide everyone with the new design details. QA role, while working with this document, we need to review this document, of course, and we need to analyze this for completeness, ambiguities, and contradictions. Same thing. And again, same as I mentioned with the PRD, you have to have this document in written. Large companies, in my experience, they all follow this process, and they will provide you with this document. Especially if you have multiple developers working, on same module or different modules, coordinating people is a very complex task, and functional specification is a very good way, great way to coordinate the software development across, multiple developers, many developers. And if you find, again, if you read the documentation and if you don't understand the specification, then you do what I mentioned. You talk to your peers, you talk to your lead manager, eventually project management, but you can also and should also ask developers. And oftentimes, if it's something is not clear to you, it may not be clear to them as well. They just didn't think about it. It's very possible. In many cases, when QA people start asking questions, the specification grows, as you look at it. So you may start with a 100-pages document, and after, we work on our test cases and test suites, and we ask a lot of questions, and they put more and more details, you may easily end up with a 200, 300-page, document. It's all, again, different from project to project, from company to company. And by the way, I have examples of some of the documents here with me. I cannot give it to you because it's confidential. It's from my previous, projects. But you can take a look at those during the break. So I have the requirement document, the spec, which is very slim. It's not typical, but this is second version. This is a second release of the software. So it is just few features that were added on top of the first one. The functional spec for the first version of the product was, an inch wide, thick. And I also have an example of a test plan. So feel free to take a look. And function specification is a document that needs to be kept, current at all times. We need this document to be current just because you will be creating your test cases, you will be thinking about your testing strategy, and if there are any changes on the development side and the specification is not updated, you will be going in the wrong direction. So that's why it is important to ping developers frequently, maybe every week or every 2 weeks, and ask them, are there any changes in the design? Are there any changes in your implementation? And if there are those changes, specifications will need to be updated. I've been in the QA industry for like 10 years now, 11 years now, and I can tell you that slowly but surely I can see the mentality change in the developmental minds. I see people believing in the documentation more and more, and the development / QA process and software development process getting more organized, because I think now there is enough data to prove to developers that yes, we need to have all documentation in place and we need to have it current so we can test it properly and release a high quality software. With my first company, that biotech company, even though the company was ISO 9000 certified and regulated, and we had audits by FDA and customers, and the documentation development process was very strict, and test execution process was very strict, and we had to follow certain rules. Still, I could feel some resistance from developers. Why do we need to keep it? Let's just talk about it. And but when you talk, you don't have any written trace. And then if you create your, let's say, test documentation based on some chats, in the cafeteria, then when the design changes later, you have no proof of why you created your test cases that way, right? So you need this documentation as your backbone. You need to cover your ear, because otherwise, you may easily get pulled away from the real design and the real functionality of the product. And once the product comes to you at the testing phase, you will have to do too much rework with your test documentation. So that's why it is important. And again, you have to be proactive and ping developers frequently. So after design is done, we start coding phase. At coding phase, again, developers work on this functional specification, and on the QA side, as soon as the first version of specification is ready, we may start working on our test documentation.